in the icy skies above Scandinavia, where the Cold War's front lines were drawn not by trenches, but by radar screens, a distinctive silhouette often cut through the clouds, a double delta shape that looked more like a dart than a fighter. Its name was Draken, Swedish for dragon. Born in neutrality, built in secrecy, and flown with precision, it was one of the most remarkable aircraft of its generation. The Saab 35 Draken was not just Sweden's first supersonic jet fighter, it was a symbol of independence, innovation, and fierce determination to protect the skies above Scandinavia. Officially neutral, but geographically wedged between NATO and the Soviet Union, the small Scandinavian nation faced a daunting question: how to defend its vast airspace against the new threat of jet-powered bombers. Sweden's answer was simple: it would design its own jet fighter. The Swedish Air Force already had the Saab J-29 Tunnan, a chubby but capable jet that gave the country its first taste of modern air power. But the Tunnan was subsonic, and by the late 1940s, the sound barrier was the new frontier. So in 1949, the Swedish government issued a bold requirement for a new aircraft. It had to reach Mach 2. It had to climb quickly to intercept bombers at high altitude. And it had to operate from short, rural airstrips hidden across Sweden. To most designers, these demands seemed impossible. But to Saab's chief engineer, Erik Bratt, they were simply a challenge to be conquered. At Saab's headquarters in Linköping, Bratt and his team began experimenting with new wing shapes. They soon settled on a radical solution: a double delta wing. Unlike traditional wings, the Drakens had two distinct sweep angles, a sharply swept-inner section for high-speed flight, and a gentler outer section for lift and stability at low speed. It was unlike anything seen before, a true work of aerodynamics and art. The design allowed the Draken to take off and land at low speeds while still slicing through the air at supersonic velocity. It was ahead of its time, so advanced in fact, that Saab had to invent new testing techniques. They even built a small-scale proof-of-concept jet, the Saab 210 Lille Draken, the Little Dragon, to study the wing's behavior in flight. On January 21, 1952, the Lille Draken took to the skies. It flew beautifully, confirming that the double delta design was not only viable but revolutionary. By 1955, the first full-scale prototype of the Saab 35 Draken was ready. The prototype Draken, sleek and futuristic, looked like it had flown straight out of a science fiction book. Powered by a Rolls-Royce Avon turbojet built under license in Sweden, it promised both power and reliability. On October 25, 1955, the Draken made its maiden flight. And during testing, it achieved what no European fighter had done before: it broke the sound barrier in level flight. Sweden, a nation of just 8 million people, had built the first supersonic jet fighter in Western Europe. The Saab 35 Draken was powered by a Volvo RM6C turbojet, a Swedish-built version of the Rolls-Royce Avon. It produced over 17,000 pounds of thrust with afterburner, enough to push the aircraft beyond Mach 2.0 at altitude. The Draken's service ceiling exceeded 65,000 feet, and its range stretched to nearly 2,000 kilometers with external tanks. It was fast, agile, and visually stunning, a delta-wing arrow soaring across the cold northern skies. The early models were armed with two 30mm Aden cannons and RB-24 air-to-air missiles, Swedish-built versions of the American AIM-9 Sidewinder. Later variants would add more advanced radar, improved engines, and increased range. For Sweden's Air Force, the Draken was not just a weapon, it was a guardian of neutrality. While the superpowers raced to build massive fleets, Sweden quietly ensured it could defend its skies alone. Throughout the 1960s, the Cold War turned the Baltic Sea into one of the most surveilled regions on Earth. Soviet bombers regularly tested Swedish airspace. The Draken became Sweden's silent sentinel. It patrolled day and night, ready to intercept any intruder. Swedish doctrine emphasized dispersed defense, instead of large airbases that could be bombed in the first minutes of war. Drakens operated from short stretches of highway, reinforced rural roads, and even icy strips in the forest. Ground crews practiced rapid turnarounds, refueling and rearming the aircraft in under 10 minutes, often with only a handful of people. It was a system that gave Sweden a massive advantage in survivability. In a real conflict, the Draken wouldn't have to return to a base, the base would come to the Draken. And the aircraft itself was astonishingly versatile. It could reach Mach 2, climb to 50,000 feet, and turn tighter than most contemporary interceptors. Its handling at high altitude was superb, and in the hands of a skilled pilot, it could outperform even some American fighters of the era. The Draken's excellence didn't go unnoticed abroad. Denmark, Finland, and Austria all purchased versions of the aircraft, customizing them for their own defense needs. For smaller nations, it offered something unique, a high-performance, affordable jet that didn't rely on US or Soviet influence. In Denmark, Drakens served as all-weather interceptors, protecting NATO's northern flank. Finland, maintaining its delicate neutrality, acquired its Drakens from both Sweden and Denmark, keeping its fleet balanced between east and west. And in Austria, Drakens became the pride of the nation's small but capable air arm, serving faithfully until the early 2000s. Each country added its own modifications, radar upgrades, navigation systems, and improved weapon controls. But the heart of the aircraft, that incredible double-delta wing, remained unchanged. It was proof that Sweden's design had been decades ahead of its time. The Draken's cockpit was simple but effective: analog gauges, radar scope, and basic fire control systems. It may have looked modest next to American fighters, but it was tough, reliable, and optimized for combat in extreme northern conditions. One of the aircraft's most remarkable flight characteristics was its ability to perform the Cobra maneuver, a sudden, high angle of attack pitch up, where the nose lifted sharply without stalling the plane. This maneuver, decades later, would be made famous by the Soviet Su-27, but the Draken did it first. By the 1990s, the Cold War had ended, and newer aircraft like the Saab Draken and Gripen had taken center stage. The Draken, after decades of faithful service, was gradually retired from frontline duty. Sweden retired its last Drakens in 1999. Austria kept theirs flying until 2005, marking the end of an era. But the Draken refused to disappear. Several were sold to private collectors and flight research programs in the United States, where they continued to fly as supersonic chase planes for NASA and other agencies. Even today, the sight of a Draken roaring into the sky, twin shock cones shimmering on its double-delta wings, still turns heads wherever it flies. The Saab 35 Draken was far more than a fighter jet. It was proof that a small nation, with vision and determination, could build a world-class aircraft without relying on superpower assistance. From the frozen forests of Sweden to the high skies of Austria, the Draken ruled for nearly half a century. Its name meant dragon, and in every sense, it lived up to it. If you enjoyed this story of Cold War innovation and Scandinavian engineering, join us again on Skies of War, where history's greatest aircraft continue to fly.